and get started. Another thing to let you all know who are joining us, at the bottom of your screen, you should see the ability to enter a question in the Q&A. If you do have one, we will be leaving questions to the end of the presentation, but you can go ahead and put them in there during the presentation if they come up for you. And so now we're going to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. First up, we'll have Simon Hunt, Assistant Department Manager at the University of Georgia. I think Simon will be first. And then we'll have Julie Darken, Assistant Head at University of Georgia. And then we'll have David Edens, Director of Libraries at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College. Thank you all for joining us. Let's get started.
All right, thanks, Joy. Hey, everyone, thanks for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about the Cooperative Cataloging Pilot Project that we've been running for about 2 years. And I'll be giving a brief overview of the project, and then Julie will talk a bit about some of the nitty-gritty, and then as our first guinea pig in the project, David Edens of ABAC will talk about their experience on their end. So the Cooperative Cataloging Project, the roots of it go back to the guiding principles for collaboration in a new library management system way back in 2015. And these principles stress collaboration, reducing duplication of work across the system, rethinking our workflows, looking for efficiencies, and looking across institutions to take advantage of the shared systems. And with our shared ALMA environment, it enables us to do this cataloging project. And in the project, one or more of the institutions that have a full-time cataloging staff can take on some of the cataloging duties for smaller institutions that don't have dedicated catalogers. For example, at UGA, we have a large, stable department with established practices. We have several librarians doing original cataloging each day. We've got people with various trainings, such as the Library of Congress program for cooperative cataloging. Name authority training. We have a serials cataloging department with a concert trained librarian. And because we have a lot of internal training, our staff is able to keep up on changes in cataloging practices, things like RDA updates, as well as the changing software environment that is the monthly ALMA update. Meanwhile, the staff at smaller institutions can focus on library tasks and local needs, such as reference and instruction, circulation, and things like being a library director. So far, we've had a few participants and interested participants in the project. ABAC and Atlanta Metropolitan are the biggest contributors, and Savannah State is our newest participant. They're about to start sending us some material. And this is a basic overview of how this all works. The blue bars are for the home institutions, and they order the materials. They generate a temporary record, give it a barcode, and then send it through the courier to us, where we do all the cataloging work, then send it back to the courier, where they do some final prep and get it back on the shelves. So for the home institution, this looks like creating just a very brief bib record, which you can do using the add physical item feature in ALMA, where you just create, it's a record, it's got a title, you put your location, your barcode in it, suppress it from discovery, and that creates a placeholder record for us. And then using that placeholder record, we've set up these work order statuses to monitor where it is in the system. So you scan it into a status we've called outbound courier. And as you can see from the bottom image there, you can see the process type is now send to UGA. And since we're using the courier, we're using the standard courier routing slips, but so that we don't confuse our fulfillment staff and they think it's a GIL Express item, we've also added a little indicator to route it. It's for USG CAT, route it to me, and that'll keep it from getting weird statuses from people trying to scan it in the wrong place. And finally, we can use the process types to track the progress through the system. We've got 3 set up, one outbound from the home institution to us. And then when we receive it, we scan it into the cataloging, the O2 catalog being cataloged at UGA. And then when we're finished, we scan it again to indicate that it's heading back through the courier to the home institution. And that's the process in a nutshell. I'm going to hand it over to Julie now.
Thanks, Simon. Let me get my screen share going here. Okay, so as Simon was mentioning in his earlier part of this presentation, there are things that we do at UGA when we're cataloging items from co-op institutions, and there are some things that we don't do. Items need to be barcoded, as Simon had said. Before they come here, we don't do that part. Some of the things we do are, you can see on this slide, we'll add OCLC holdings, we'll create original records, we'll create authority records, we'll relink items and shelf list items that come to us for this project. Some of the things that we don't do are physical marking of items like property stamping. We also don't barcode. We don't change locations in holdings records. Cataloging staff at UGA doesn't have knowledge about the library or the location that these items are going to be going back to when they get back home. So we don't change this information in holdings records outside of like a special project that would, batch change holdings or something for us to do that. We also don't catalog serials or special collections materials for this project. I want to talk about some statistics from the project later in the presentation, but first I want to show you a couple of short examples of the workflows that the statistics are describing. I don't want to get too far into the cataloging details, but I just want to go over them briefly. So one of the statistical categories that we track is adding a new bibliographic record to the network zone. That's going to mean that a new copy of an OCLC record is being imported into the network zone for the first time when we're working on this item. So that workflow sort of goes like this. You can see that in this screenshot, I've located this item in ABAC's institution zone using a barcode search. As I mentioned before, and Simon did, all the items that arrive at UGA for this project have been barcoded at their home institution, and then item records and a suppressed bib record has been created as well in the IZ. And then the next step for us doing cataloging would be to locate a matching record for that item in OCLC. So this screen is showing the appropriate record to use for this item. Notice that there aren't currently any holdings for ABAC on this record yet. So since I've located my OCLC record, I want to check the institution zone and the network zone, and you can see that a copy of this record doesn't yet exist in either place. Now I'll go back to that suppressed record that was created at ABAC and add an 035 containing the OCLC number of the record that I want to use for the item that I have in hand. And I'll unsuppress also this record at this point and share that record with the network zone. So at this point, I can bring in that new OCLC record that I want to use. And I'll also just go ahead and update ABAC's OCLC holdings at this point also. When I import that OCLC record, it's going to match on the 035 field that I just added to the record in ALMA and overlay in the network zone. And then next, we would do any kind of local edits. So for this project, we add a local 972 field with the date catalog to each record that we work on. We do this at UGA whenever we catalog anything. And so we continue to do it for records that we work on for the co-op project as well. If you had other local information to add, you could go ahead and do that at this time, like a local series or gift donor information or anything like that. In cases of a call number conflict, we'll adjust cutter numbers as necessary and assign a local call number in an 090. But in this case, the call number was fine and it didn't need any adjusting. And then the last step for this item is going to be to save that call number to the holdings record. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't change libraries or physical locations in holdings records as part of this project. Only the staff that are located at the item's home institution know the appropriate location destination for co-op items. And similarly, we also wouldn't edit a material type or an item policy in an item record for a co-op item because again, only staff at those institutions know the correct uses and applications of types and policies for their own materials. So the next statistical category that we keep track of is linking to an existing network zone record. This means that holdings are going to be added to a record that's already out there and existing in the USG network zone. So again, we start with that same barcode search in the IZ, and the next step is to go out and locate a matching record in OCLC. It's, the same second step as well. Make any necessary changes to the OCLC record and update the holdings. So in this case, the change that I made to this record was to add series numbering, and I updated ABAC's holdings. And then I search again by that OCLC number in the IZ and the network zone, but this time it's different. I find that the OCLC record I want to use is already in use by another institution in the network zone. So instead of importing a new record from OCLC, we're going to unsuppress the record that has been created at ABAC in their institution zone and link that out to the existing network zone record. And now we can see in this slide that both institutions' holdings are being represented on that record in the network zone. And the last step here is making any local edits, shelf listing the item, and updating the holdings. So all those steps are the same as well. So why do we track these actions in particular? Well, it seems like one of them is less work. It's less steps. Seems like linking out to that existing network zone record would be easier and quicker. And sometimes that's the truth. But other times using an existing network zone record can present different challenges that need to be resolved, such as merging multi-match records, which would need to be accomplished before you could add any additional holdings. Also, potentially keeping track of these actions over time could tell us some things about how we're using the network zone, how co-op institutions are using the network zone, and how we're both using OCLC within the scope of this project. It could also tell us some things about future staffing and planning for the project as it goes on. We keep track of a few other things. These are just some of them. I just wanted to highlight for you. So we upgrade OCLC records for this project. You can see the record on the left is the earlier version. The record on the right is the upgraded version. And upgrading a record in OCLC terms means that you're going to be adding or editing elements in the description that are going to bring that record up to a higher level of completeness. So for instance, you can see in this record on the right that I've added a call number, subject headings, edition, designation, and some other things like that. We also create NACO authority records for this project. NACO is the Name Authority Cooperative Organization. Simon mentioned that earlier. It's a program through which participants can contribute authority records for people, places, works to the Library of Congress NACO National Authority File. This is an example of a series authority record that I created for an ABAC item that was entitled Pulp Vietnam. In the network zone, you can see that ABAC has a physical copy of this item, while UGA has holdings for an ebook on a community zone record. That community zone record is not an OCLC record, and we don't edit those. UGA's policy is to create series authority records and to trace series, and we've continued to do that for co-op items. You might notice here that UGA's NACO OCLC symbol is appearing in the 04 of this record. I do have to switch logins back to my UGA login to create authority records for this project, since I don't have a NACO logon set up for each co-op institution with OCLC. And then after creating that series authority record, I then edited that PCC authenticated record in OCLC to add the series access point I had created. We've also created local series for this project. Staff at ABAC asked us to create a local series called Franklin Library Collection as a way for them to corral all of these volumes that had been published by the Franklin Library together locally at their library. And we create original bib records. So this is one that I did for ABAC, and this is just a sample of one that I did for an Atlanta Metropolitan. So now I want to talk about the statistics. So in 2018, as Simon had mentioned, we started some background work on this project. The only actual cataloging that we did that year was about 5 items that we received from ABAC that were sort of a good test run for us to see how everything was going to work, if it was going to work how we thought. And then the next year in 2019, that's when things really got off the ground for real with the project. So you can see that in 2019, we cataloged 151 items for ABAC with the project. And we also started working with 2 other partner institutions that were Fort Valley State University and Atlanta Metropolitan State College. We cataloged 515 total items for the project in 2019. About 33% of them were linked out to existing network zone records. About 62% of them were new records that we brought into the network zone for the first time. And about 5% were other, which is probably things that were relinked items, such as like added copies or volumes that were corralled onto a monoset record. I also created 27 original bib records in 2019 and upgraded 21 records in OCLC, and created 2 name authority records and 3 series authority records for the project. You can see that the total number of items decreased quite a bit from 2019 to over 2020. I think this is probably due mostly to COVID closures. The project was really only going that year from January to about the middle of March. And then we started up again around August. So we did 280 items for the project in 2020. About 21% of them were linked out to an existing network zone record. About 69% were things that we brought into the network zone for the first time, and about 10% were added copies, added volumes, things like that. We did 14 original records and upgraded 18 records and created 8 series authority records in 2020. And then so far this year, it kind of seems like the numbers are picking back up. So from January to April of this year, we've already done 262 items for the project. So that's only 18 fewer than everything we did in 2020, the whole total. And of those items, about 44% were linked out to NZ records, about 44% were new things we brought in, and about 12% were other. These were some mono sets, I think, mostly that I remember doing a couple months ago. So, and I've created 11 original bib records, upgraded 19 records, and created 1 name authority and 3 series authority records so far through April of this year. So total, over the whole course of the project since 2018, we've done 1,062 items. Of those, about 32% were linked out to existing records. About 59% were new things brought in from OCLC, and about 8% have been other. Over the whole course of the project, we've done 52 original records and upgraded 37, and we've created 3 name authority and 13 series authority records. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Julie. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. And we'll go ahead and get that presenting. Okay, so I want to talk to you just briefly about ABAC, how it's affected us, and what it's enabled us to do moving forward. So first off, just for anybody who doesn't know a lot about us, Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College is a state college headquartered in Tifton, Georgia. We also have an instructional site in Bainbridge, Georgia. We're a 4-year school. We also offer 2-year associate degrees, major focus on experiential learning and undergraduate research. We have just under 4,000 full-time students. As far as the libraries are concerned, we do have libraries located both in Tifton and Bainbridge. The Tifton Library has 2 full-time librarian positions, although we only have 1 librarian right now, and 2 part-time assistants. And the Bainbridge Library has 1 full-time assistant and 2 part-time assistants. So part of the reason this was so valuable for us is because we don't have a dedicated cataloger. I'm the person who does a lot of the cataloging here in Tifton, just because I'm the person who has the experience doing it, but I picked up a lot of that just on the job as I had to. I don't have official cataloging training. We don't have a cataloging department here at ABAC. So being able to connect with UGA on that was really helpful for us. So it was, agreeing with what Julie and Simon has said, it was late 2018 that we first got involved with the program. We did the pilot to the pilot, I guess you could call it, where we sent just a few items along. And then moving forward, pretty much anytime we've had to put in order for books, we've made use of the collaboration project to get those books cataloged. So the process we go through here in ABAC, just to give a little more background to what Simon was talking about. Once books come in an order, we do try to check the network zone to see if there's things we can handle on our own. I do know a lot of the batch from this year that ended up being network zone matches that Julie was talking about were because we had just so many books coming in at once. We just ended up sending most toward UGA. So once we've made sure as best we can that we do need to send these into the project, we go ahead and begin the process Simon described of physical processing and sending it through Gill Express. So as I mentioned, this has been beneficial for ABAC mainly because we are very lean on staffing and we don't have a dedicated cataloging department. So as I said, ABAC has no dedicated cataloger. The current librarian, myself, I'm mostly self-taught when it comes to cataloging. Not only does UGA have a much more developed cataloging department, they have people there who are constantly daily working on these sorts of issues, whereas I may pick up a cataloging project once a month. So I have to take the time to retrain myself on a lot of this every time I do it. Whereas working with people who do it professionally day to day, they're much more efficient than I am. It also makes for a better use of time because since I don't have to reteach myself cataloging once a month, I'm more able to focus on things like library instruction, reference, spending my time where ABAC needs me. And finally, it has allowed us to build some pretty strong relationships as far as being able to help each other out. Obviously, this presentation only exists because of that, but beyond that, we've had opportunities for further collaboration where if I don't know something, I already have that contact with Simon and other people in the UGA departments where I can reach out to them and they're typically very willing to help. The best example I have of this is last year, we went through a transition here at ABAC because we were moving back into our library. We'd been out for 2 years for a renovation, and as part of that renovation, we lost about half of our floor space for stacks. So we had to make some cuts to our collection, and we ended up withdrawing about 40,000 items, mainly due to items being out of date, being too damaged to be repaired, or just not being books that supported the collection. So we were able to handle the process of withdrawing them from Alma pretty well on our own, but we had somewhat limited experience with handling withdrawing and cleaning up of records with OCLC. Luckily, I was able to reach out to Simon using the relationship we'd already built on working on this cataloging project, and he was able to not only provide me with some training material on how to perform this procedure, but he actually sat down with me in a Zoom meeting and we walked through it together. So already having those bridges built from this base project allowed us to do a lot more there. And I should have mentioned this in the benefits for ABAC portion, but I do want to mention that UGA has been very helpful with providing training material, providing cheat sheets about how to process these books, because again, we're a limited staff here at ABAC, so we all had to kind of chip in on this. I don't think there's anybody who's worked here as either a full-time or part-time person while this project's gone on that hasn't participated in preparing items to be sent out, bringing them back in. So having the support of a larger, more established cataloging department has been invaluable for us. And that's about all I have on our end. So I think at this time we're ready to take questions.
Okay, great. If you have a question, attendees, you can go ahead and raise your hand, use that feature, and then I will give you the ability to talk aloud, or you can type your question into the Q&A. So it'll give you all a little bit of time, a few minutes here.
Well, and while they're doing that, I just remembered one thing I forgot to mention, which is the turnaround time. Before the pandemic, we were able to turn materials around really pretty quick, usually within a day or sometimes even the same day. Unless we had like a big shipment come in, things really get turned around quite smoothly. Of course, when the pandemic hit, we had materials quarantines to worry about and that sort of thing. So anything that was sent in March took about 6 months to get back last year.
How is that going now that we're towards the, I don't know if we're towards the end? Hopefully we're towards the end of this pandemic.
Well, so our mailroom did have, I think, a 5-day quarantine period where they held mail. And then of course, also our staff, because we were trying to maintain social distancing and we had a very staggered schedule. I was going in about 2 half-days a week. So I think the mailroom is now shrunk down to 48 hours. We're starting to go in a bit more, but it's, yeah, there's still a bit of a slowdown. It's probably going to be a few more months before we're back to normal, just, you know, the same as everyone else.
All right, I do see 2 questions so far. One from Lisa Milliken. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Does an institution have to use ALMA acquisitions in order to participate in cooperative cataloging?
I can speak to that. So ABAC does not use ALMA acquisitions. I'm not sure if it would make the process smoother to use the ALMA acquisitions module, but we pretty much all of ours go through the resources module. So we order them outside of acquisitions. We don't really use the acquisitions module at all, just because we haven't had a lot of time to get training on it outside of the general training that I did, I guess 3 years ago now. So short answer, no. Longer answer, it may be helpful to use the acquisitions module for it, but it's not strictly required to participate in the project.
Yeah, because these we're creating just these brief records using that create item feature. You don't need to have acquisitions, and in fact, actually, if you are using ALMA acquisitions, there'd probably be a bit more integration with that process to make sure it's coming in the right way. But yeah, it works either way.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Lucy Harrison has a second question. Are you expecting a lot of items from Savannah? Will that be the same process?
Well,
Yeah.
Julie, do you know?
I do. I don't know how many they may have at Savannah, but I do know that they reached out saying they were going to send just a few things at first. So Simon can speak more to whether it's the same process to set it up and all of that with Alma, but I don't get the impression they have a whole lot of things that they're wanting to send right away.
And yes, it would be the same process with work orders and the courier and that sort of thing.
Looks like Jennifer West, who is from Savannah, says we have a handful of original cataloging needs. So there's your answer.
Great.
Any additional questions? Go ahead and type them into the Q&A. I really loved your description of your presentation when you said, the power of, collaboration, the power of, cooperation, and with smaller libraries being able to get the assistance of larger libraries, then everyone is able to do more. So that's great. Let's see, Brittany Williams has a question. How are institutions selected to participate in this cooperative project?
I think that the institutions that are participating currently are participating because the project was introduced at RACL, and directors at different institutions expressed interest. And so that's how other institutions became involved in the project initially. And since we're still kind of in the pilot phase of that, that's how we've just got a few institutions going. We wanted to keep it sort of manageable at the moment, really.
So if someone institution wanted to participate, librarian on here is wondering, I think I want to do that. Basically, they should talk to their director and just sort of go from there. Okay. We have a fourth question from Susanna Smith. If we have a copy cataloger who doesn't do original work, could we contact you?
Sure. I would say, just like we were talking about before, talk to your director and see what they think about that, and we can start the ball rolling from there.
Yes, there is a small amount of initial setup that we have to do, where we set up accounts in your Alma environment for us so we can go in there and catalog, and we also get your OCLC credentials so we can update your holdings.
Okay, thanks for those answers. I'm not seeing any additional questions come through. We do have a few, more minutes, everyone. If there are additional questions that you have, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Or if you wish to ask your question aloud, you can raise your hand. And let me check those things. Okay, no raised hands. And no additional questions coming through in the Q&A. And so I guess we can go ahead and wrap this up. I assume if people did have additional questions, they can contact you after this presentation. Is that correct?
Yep, you can contact me at simon@uga.edu if you have a question.
Yeah, and my email address is jdyles@uga.edu also.
And I can be reached at dedens@abac.edu.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, David, for being here to give, a window into this cooperative project that you're a part of. And I hope that everyone else enjoys the rest of GUGM and the rest of their week. These slides will be immediately available on the conference platform, and then later on the recording will be available as well. So thank you all so much. Have a good day.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thanks, Joy.